Hey Pyro, I just watched your video reply. It says the first of three parts, so I assume there's more coming, and that's okay. I'll listen to those too and add what I think about those. But I just wanted to comment on what you said so far. Um, First of all, you talked about Lamarckian evolution again, and how it does apply. It does seem to apply to this evolution of consciousness. Um, but that it's not as simple as like begetting like. It's not as simple as you mentioned that like a child can be raised by parents that are totally different from the way the child turns out, and like we don't really. I mean, I guess what has a large part to do with that is the availability of information to them. And I think that effect that you described of the child being totally different from the parents is a very new kind of a phenomenon, or at least it's a lot more common now than it would have been a couple hundred years ago, when just the availability of information and the access that we have now to all these varying viewpoints, and we can travel to all these varying places, geographic places, so easily and quickly, that it's a lot harder to shelter a child now, and it's basically impossible now that the internet is there and the kids are learning to use this when they're 5 years old, surfing the internet. That is going to, within one generation, that is going to really totally alter the way that human beings do business and human beings communicate and human beings interact and understand the world. Because the kids that are just being brought up now that are 5 and 6 years old, and even the kids that are born now, I can't even imagine. But these younger generations, I already experienced this with computers and the internet, but it hit me when I was like 12 or 13. But for these kids, it's when they're still really maturing as thinking organisms and becoming people. They're becoming people with the internet and with all this information, this free information that's just there waiting for them to find it. That's going to change everything, I think. It's already changing everything. So yeah, it's definitely not a simple um, linear pattern of like memes being transferred from parents to children. It's not at all like that. It's a whole level higher than biological evolution. Uh, it's at a different place entirely. It's so much more complex and so much more interconnected, and so much more dynamic, and it evolves so much faster. Like it's another, just like matter before it became life was less complex than life. Life is less complex than mind, and what's after mind? That's what I'm really interested in. If there's this evolution progressing from matter to life to mind, what's next? Soul, spirit. There's got to be something next, right? I mean, this isn't uh, you know pulling an idea out of my ass. It's like, wow, these patterns of evolutionary transcendence to these totally qualitatively different stages of evolution we never would have expected. Like when we looked at when we look at the material world, you would never expect life to come out of that. And then when you look at the living world, you would never expect human beings, and human culture and technology and language and all of these, you know, ideas to come out of this these biological eating pooping machines. I mean, who would have thought? So it's, something must be on the horizon. Um, the evolution of consciousness is like it's increasing so quickly that there's that nature nurture debate, and nature has a couple billion years, even all the way back to the Big Bang if you want to go that far. It has all this history of development and selection and diversification and complexity, and it's this whole history, and then nurture is what happens after the organism is born and the biological genetic line gets cut off and it's free to go find itself. And Most animals, they don't have much nurture. I mean, they learn a few things from experience, but human beings learn so much from nurture that we can almost say that the human nurturing is almost as has almost as much influence as nature had on the organism itself, because we can really it's easy to say that there's no such thing as human nature only because our nurturing is so powerful. Okay, and I want to talk about hierarchies a little bit. My thinking on this issue would be identical to yours if I hadn't read one book. It's called Sex, Ecology, and Spirituality, The Spirit of Evolution by Ken Wilber. I'm not sure if you've heard of him before. If you haven't, he's worth checking out. Um, he's worth checking out. He's not, I mean, there's a lot to say about Ken Wilber, but I won't talk about that now. I just wanted to read, though, what he wrote about this exact issue, this exact argument that we're having. And I'll just quote him directly. He can say it better than I could explain it. Nowhere in the literature of modern social theory is there more acrimony expressed than over the topic of hierarchy versus heterarchy. On one side, we have the champions of egalitarian and equalitarian views, the heterarchists. They see all creatures as equal nodes in the web of life, and, with good reasons, inveigh against harsh social ranking and domination, arguing instead for a pluralistic wholeness that intrinsically values each strand in the web, with higher and lower being forms not of organization, but domination and exploitation. Even the notions of higher and lower are said to be part of old paradigm thinking, and not part of the new paradigm, or network, or web of life thinking. And yet, when it comes to the actual sciences of this web of life, the sciences of wholeness and connectedness, we find them speaking unmistakably of hierarchy as the basic organizing principle of wholeness. They maintain that you cannot have wholeness without hierarchy, because unless you organize the parts into a larger whole whose glue is a principle higher or deeper than the parts possess alone, unless you do that, then you have heaps and not wholes. You have strands, but never a web. Even if the whole is a mutual interaction of parts, the wholeness cannot be on the same level as the partness, or it would itself be merely another part. Not a whole capable of embracing and integrating each and every part. Hierarchy and wholeness, in other words, are two names for the same thing, and if you destroy one, you completely destroy the other. It is ironic, to say the least, that the social champions of the web of life deny hierarchy in any form, while the sciences of the web of life insist upon it. And it is doubly ironic that the former often point to the latter for support, i.e., that the new physics supports the equalitarian web of life. So basically, this book is really about his Wilber's theory of evolution, and that as we evolve, say, from matter to biology to mind, we're building a hierarchy, or the universe is building a hierarchy, but not a linear hierarchy in the sense that mind is somehow better or higher than matter, but it's more of like a Chinese box where matter exists as like not the base rung in the ladder, but as the center or the most fundamental level, and then that somehow transforms into life, which exists as a sphere around matter, and then life somehow transforms into mind, which is another sphere that's on the outside of both life and matter, and encompasses it all. And then whatever comes next, again, it's a higher structure, you would say. I guess it's a more all-encompassing structure. The bigger mind, is more all-encompassing than matter and body, or biology. So that's the hierarchy, but he calls it a holarchy because he wants to emphasize the fact that for the universe to be whole, it's whole by virtue of the fact that there is a mind encompassing a body encompassing matter, and that each of those stages is a developmental sequence of increasing complexity, increasing order as well. There's just higher stages of functionality that are vibrating at a higher frequency, say. What's going on here?